Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episodes 107 and 108 of Steven Universe, Future Boy Zoltron, and Last One Out of Beach City. And, well, these are kind of character-focused episodes, most kind of sort of filler, but they're entertaining at least, somewhat. But basically, yeah, for starters, let's look at Future Boy Zoltron as, again, odd-numbered episode first. And this one actually is a Mr. Smiley-focused episode, as he ends up he adds a new attraction to his arcade. In this case, an old fortune-telling machine called Zoltron, whose gimmick is that he is a robot from the future who can tell your future because he's from the future. That was too many futures there. But basically, yeah, it works like any other fortune-telling machine. You point a quarter in, ask it a question, and it gives you like a vague answer. Of course, the machine is old, so it doesn't always give good answers, and even when the answers it does get aren't exactly vague, which Mr. Smiley has no objections to, because he already got your quarter, so sucks to be you. But Steven, being Steven, he gets excited about it and begins testing it out. Of course, the first time he gets a fluke, and Mr. Smiley kind of has a laugh at his expense when Steven wants his quarter back. But when he makes a comment about it, Steven kind of asks, because the comment was pretty much a joke, and Steven asks more for details about it. And yeah, Mr. Smiley reveals that he was in a comedy act once. Although when Steven asks for more details, he pulls the line that Jim from Kodioka gives. I'd rather not talk about it. So Steven decides to ask Zoltron for what happened, and when he's having trouble answering, Steven gives him a couple light taps, and the machine explodes. Yep. Mr. Smiley is, of course, not in a good mood because of this, and Steven begs for some way to repay the damages he's caused because he doesn't want to get another ban. As such, Mr. Smiley comes up with a different solution. Have Steven stand in for Zoltron, which actually seems to work, as Steven ends up sitting in there and wearing a costume, and, well, and people go up to him and just ask him questions. And, of course, Steven being Steven, he actually does try to give some good answers and try to help some people out And there's even trying to stop Onion from committing robbery by saying, "If you aren't careful, I see jail bars in your future," which just prompts Onion to put on a ski mask. So yeah, it works somewhat. But either way, yeah, the attraction actually does get a lot of traction because of Steven just giving genuine answers and trying to give the best advice he can. So yeah, a lot of people are coming, Mr. Smiley's getting quarters, everything's kind of doing well, right? Well, as the money kind of keeps rolling in, a new patron arrives, a man who clearly looks a mite depressed, he's not someone from Beach City. It's clear he's from out of town, and even his outfit really looks gloomy, just consisting of a black trench coat, pants, and so forth, and his voice just sounds down and depressed like the human version of Eeyore. But he ends up going up to the Zoltron machine and decides to start asking Steven questions for just a laugh. But the questions he asks are rather a mite depressing, as he asks if it was a mistake to come back here, would he even miss it? Would he even miss it again? Why does he push people away? And, well, Steven doesn't really know how to answer him, and he isn't going away. He keeps putting in more quarters, and Steven just starts trying to give even the most generic answers, just trying to get this guy to piss off. But he doesn't go anywhere, and ultimately Steven's only saved because when he tries putting his last quarter in, he ends up dropping it, and it falls in between the wood and the boardwalk. And so he does try and go. He ends up kind of going away dejected. But Steven, well, being Steven, he still wants to help this guy, and he wishes that he had like a way of genuinely seeing his future, like Garnet. And as if on cue, Garnet appears because she knew Steven would need her help, and so Steven asks if he can borrow her future vision because he wants to help this random stranger, and Garnet says, "That seems like an appropriate use of my powers," so she kisses him on the forehead and loans him her future vision, which like with the Snow Day episode. As such, Garnet gives the guy a quarter before going off and telling Steven to at least make it home by dinner. And so he puts the last quarter in, and so he asks, "Well, will seeing him again do any good?" Will seeing him again do any good? And Steven sees three possibilities: him in this story saying he's happy to see this guy, only for him to say, "You're lying, no one's happy to see me," or another future saying, "It's been too long," and again he's like, "Oh, I'm too late, I should have come sooner," and then finally just Steven coming clean and the guy just being dejected. So Steven realizes no matter what he says, nothing will get fixed. There's sadness in his future, no matter what. And so the guy decides that's only what he expected. I guess it truly is the end of Mr. Smiley and Mr. Frowny. It turns out, yep, yeah, it turns out this is actually Mr. Smiley's partner from the comedy days. And basically, the instant Steven realizes this, he's kind of shocked. And so pretty much Mr. Frowny just kind of goes, screw this, and decides he's just going to leave town, that coming here was probably a waste of time. And so when Steven sees Mr. Smiley later, well, he tells him that he encountered Mr. Frowny and that basically he just seemed dejected. And so Mr. Smiley kind of explains what their routine was. It was basically one guy who was super positive, one guy was super negative. The bit was that they would always work off each other, and one guy would be all depressed while one guy would be overexcited. And at first, it did seem to be going well. They had a great show, but Mr. Frowny was always sad. On or off stage, he was always depressed about something, and despite Mr. Smiley always trying to cheer him up and make him happy, nothing really seemed to work. And eventually it got to the point where Mr. Smiley started wondering, Mr. Smiley was just kind of feeling, it just got to Mr. Smiley too, because all he wanted to do was just make his friend happy, but nothing ever seemed to work. And based on what we learn later, it kind of sounds like eventually that's what caused Mr. Smiley to just kind of throw the towel in, so to speak, as he realized nothing was helping his friend out, and so he just kind of put the kibosh on it, which is partly why Mr. Frowny's probably here to see him today, as he wanted to try and rekindle whatever relationship, whatever spark was in their relationship, so to speak, to try and I don't know, just kind of, it's basically to just check in and see how things are going, and if there really was anything there worth salvaging. As such, Mr. Smiley wonders if it's even worth going to see his friend at all. And Steven does see 3 possibilities of them seeing each other again. And again, like with Mr. Frowny, it's just sadness no matter what. And so while Mr. Smiley is about to just kind of once again leave, Steven does ask Mr. Smiley, did he know that what he was doing was making you sad? And so Mr. Smiley decides he'll at least see him off. And so he asks Steven where he was. Steven tells him he went to a bus stop, and thankfully Smiley is able to hit Frowny off before they leave, and he actually is happy when Frowny is happy to see Smiley, which I even love that when he asks, how'd you know I was here, and then when he says, oh yeah, the robot boy told me, Frowny just freaks out when he sees Steve. He's like, oh, he came to life! I like that, that's kind of funny. But yeah, they do end up talking, and Mr. Smiley does confirm why he kind of put the kibosh on it. That basically, no matter what, he just was just depressed, and he was just depressed, and no matter what he did, he was always just sad. He couldn't really do it anymore because of that. And basically the reason why he was always sad is because basically they had 2 different ideas of what they wanted the show to be. Mr. Frowny wanted Smiley to take it seriously, and Mr. Smiley just wanted Frowny to have fun. It was just these 2 different ideals, and while they both enjoy, and it's clear they both enjoyed what they were doing, they just wanted different things out of it. And as a result, these difference of ideals and difference in their demeanors just caused them to clash and drift apart. It's just, things happened. It's not that they both didn't like what they were doing, it's just, there's only so much you can do before things just kind of fall apart. But and so Frowny does kind of realize that no matter what have happened, they was going to come falling apart anyway, and they wouldn't have worked out, that the routine wouldn't have worked out anyway. But Smiley does reassure Frowny that he did value their time together as a comedy duo, as he just starts doing the routine right there at the bus stop, and they just go right into it as if it were like the good old days. And just they start doing a routine, they start talking, basically Mr. Smiley's all positive, Frowny's all sad, but they work off each other well, and yeah, it is kind of amusing, and Steven just kind of watches all happy, and even when, and at one point Mr. Frowny said, and so Mr. Smiley says, hey, you know what I need to do? You know how I usually get out of my glooms or whatever? Mr. Frowny asks, what? Mr. Smiley says, I turn that frown upside down. So he picks up Frowny and turns him upside down, and this actually gets a chuckle out of Frowny as he starts as he says, I think he thinks he finally got the joke. And so basically, once they stop their act, Frowny just gives Smiley a hug, and it's nice, and it's clear that he's happy they at least saw each other. And so the episode ends with Frowny getting on the bus and leaving Beach City, Steven thinking his debt is repaid, until Smiley tells Steven that the machine cost thousands of dollars. So Steven predicts that there will be much cramped legs in his future, so there you go. But as for the last one out of Beach City, this one is actually focused more on the gems. Basically what's going on is that Amethyst is supposed to be going to a rock show with Steven. Or not with Steven, with Greg. And what's going on, basically, it's just supposed to be like a backyard party, so to speak. There's going to be people there. Basically, it's basically just a whole concert in someone's garage with a band, with people invited. Basically just a social gathering, a party, so to speak, and Amethyst is super excited. She wants the social interaction. She wants to rock out and have fun, so to speak. And Steven and Pearl, well, basically their evening is going to be putting together a puzzle. Even Pearl admits it doesn't sound as exciting as what Amethyst wants to do, but I do like that when Steven is happy about doing it, she does actually kind of smile about it. However, things kind of crash down as when Greg comes in, it turns out that, well, he can't go to the rock show. Barb, who is, I'm trying to remember, Sadie's mom, who is the mail lady, well, she invited Greg and Vidalia to I think a poker night, but don't quote me on that. Or it was just basically just game of cards. She invited them to a game of cards that same night, and while Greg would love to go to the rock show, since Barb is the lead mail carrier, well, she threatened to hold Greg's mail, and Greg knows that she doesn't make idle threats. So regardless of whether Greg wants to or not, he has to go to this thing. So he can't go with Amethyst to the rock show, which disappoints Amethyst something fierce because he doesn't want to be a solo act that night. And Pearl responds with, well, maybe we could go with you then. And while Steven's a little shocked to hear this, well, Pearl's actually all for it. She just wants to show Amethyst how cool she is. Amethyst and Steven. Because, well, they know her as uptight Pearl, the one who likes things orderly and neat and tidy. Not the rebel Pearl who fought for Earth's independence, who challenged the hierarchy of the Diamond Authority and liberated a planet from their nefarious clutches, so to speak. Basically, she wants to show how cool she is, and Greg, well, he's okay with that, to the point where he even loans her the Dondai. So, yeah, they were making a night of it. Although before they go, they do make a few pit stops. First, Pearl ends up getting dressed for the occasion, wearing a leather jacket and jeans, which is a nice little bit of foreshadowing for her. But they also stop at the Big Donut to pick up snacks and drinks. However, sorry, I'm just looking over here. Chindy doing stuff. However, as they're loading up on drinks, and Pearl decides to take a drink because hey, she wants to try drinking tonight, which I think was supposed to be like a sneaky little adult joke, but don't quote me on that. But as they're talking, someone enters the Big Donut. A lady wearing a jacket around her waist, butch pants boots has piercings and has dyed her hair pink. And yeah, it turns out she's kind of sort of a dead ringer for Rose. Not exactly the same, but close enough, to the point where it does catch Pearl's attention, and once she walks in, Amethyst uses her as an example of the type of people that Pearl will be meeting at the party, and that maybe Pearl could use her like a test run, so to speak. And so Pearl is naturally a bit nervous, but she does try and engage this mystery girl in conversation, and she flubs it up bad as she goes over by where the coffee is, and ends up... Sorry, excuse me 1 second. Sorry, dog, continue doing stuff. But anyway, yeah, Pearl goes to meet the mystery girl by the coffee, and she flubs up bad by accidentally knocking over several plastic coffee cups, and the girl just gives her a weird look before leaving the Big Donut. As such, it's considered a bust, and Pearl, Amethyst, and Steven go back out to the Dondai and drive to the party, but Steven, of course, addresses the elephant in the room and talks about how the mystery girl looked like Rose, and sure enough, once Amethyst realized that that's why Pearl had butterflies, she, of course, starts teasing her about it and so forth. But Pearl defends herself, saying, well, I could have talked to her, but the moment wasn't right, you know? Well, she seems to get a second chance. As they're driving along the road, they see the mystery lady riding right next to them, riding on a scooter. And so Steven and Amethyst think this might be Pearl's chance to actually talk to her. But of course, Pearl does kind of give a little glance towards the mystery lady, and when the mystery lady sees Pearl watching her, she does give a smile, which causes Pearl to blush something fierce. It's adorable. But sadly, they don't really get to meet them much further because the mystery lady winds up overshooting the Dondai and passes through a traffic light, which ends up turning red after she goes through, which causes Pearl and Co to stop at it. Of course, they think, well, I guess we missed our chance. I guess we're not going to be seeing her again. Maybe she'll be going to the party, and Amethyst thinks, oh, maybe she isn't. She probably, someone as cool as that probably has a lot of other contacts. And so Pearl decides to just throw caution to the wind and just drive through a red light and go as fast as possible. So they're of course like, holy shit, holy shit, Pearl, you're being a rebel and so forth. Well, what's the plan when you meet her? And Pearl's like, new Pearl, no plan. New Pearl, no plan. Unfortunately, though, her speeding ends up getting the attention of the authorities, and while Steven thinks that maybe they should pull over, and so Pearl can show them her license, Pearl reveals she ain't got one because yes, she's old and lived on the planet for thousands of years, but she ain't exactly a legal citizen. So it's kind of, so what would she tell the DMV if she went to go in and get a license? So it's clear that's, yeah, she's probably, what she's doing is but her driving around like this is very much illegal. As such, they end up getting into a car chase, and Pearl, to her credit, actually does some really impressive moves, and actually does manage to evade the police very easily, and with some very clearly somewhat dangerous maneuvers. But ultimately, she manages to shake them off by driving behind a billboard and turning the lights off, which causes the police cruiser chasing them to just drive right by. Unfortunately, though, in the whole chase, the Dondai wound up running out of gas, and the nearest gas station is 20 miles away, so yeah, the trio of gems are somewhat dead in the water. As such, they all get out of the car, and Pearl starts kind of cursing herself for how badly this night has gone. She really wanted to show Steven and Amethyst how cool she was, that she tried drinking, meeting people, just going to a party, and just lightly shoving people, so on and so forth, but she thinks that everything just blew up. But Amethyst assures Pearl she did fine. She did awesome. She was able to actually showcase that rebel side of her rather well, and even the police chase was great. She's a criminal now. How cool can that be? And even Steven assures Aunt Pearl that he was never more scared. The last time he was so scared was when Pearl almost killed him. So, they assure Pearl, the pair assure Pearl that she's fine, that she did nothing wrong. But, sure enough, as they're walking along, they end up hearing music, and when they find the source of it, there's the party! There's the concert! They're there! So they made it! And sure enough, the mystery girl that the trio saw is also there, just kind of browsing things on her phone. As such, Pearl decides that she's gonna go talk to her, while Amethyst thinks that she doesn't need to do that. She can start small if she wants. Well, Pearl just keeps going forward and finally just goes to talk to her, even offering her a handshake, which the lady accepts. As such, they get to chatting. You don't end up hearing the conversation, but once they're done, Pearl comes back, and yeah, pretty much Pearl just talked about they just chatted about little things. Pearl asked about her hair, the little girl asked Pearl about hers, and Pearl just said, my form is just an illusion created as a construct of light or whatever. The girl says, oh, I know how that was. And basically, Pearl decided to just kind of sweeten the deal, so to speak, by mentioning how she saved the planet and the human race, and that this lady should thank her. And basically, it turns out that that Pearl impressed this girl so much that she gave Pearl her phone number, which at first Pearl thought was a bad thing, until Steven and Amethyst tell her that means she wants to talk to her again. So, the episode ends with Pearl content that she actually did something right that night, and then we get kind of a weird 80s film credit roll, as they say, as everybody gets, like, weird archetypal roles. It's weird, in a somewhat credits thing. I don't know, it's weird. Either way, that's where the episode ends. So, my thoughts on these episodes. First, Future Boy Zoltron. I think Future Boy Zoltron is a nice, good mix of comedy and character drama. The comedy, for me, comes from seeing Steven as Zoltron and giving out advice, because while he may be calling himself Zoltron, it's still Steven under all that makeup. And what I love is that he is just trying to use this position to better people's lives, give them some legitimately good advice, and yeah, it does kind of work out as people do kind of heed the advice, but other people are somewhat freaked out. Like, for example, one of the first customers that Steven gets are Sadie and Lars, and of course, Steven gives very specific advice that's keyed towards them, and when he actually drops their names very casually, they just start freaking out and going, is it weird that he knows their names, before they just decide to back away and go to work. So, yeah, that's kind of amusing. But there's also like Kiki and Jenny, who are apparently arguing over them both getting their own separate rooms. Well, Steven says that they're both right. They both deserve the separate rooms. They're both just happy about it. Well, in the background, Kofi's just shaking his head no, because it's Kofi. Of course, he's not going to agree to that. So basically, it's a hit. I do like that. And while the stuff with Mr. Smiley and Mr. Frowny does kind of have some nice little emotional depth to it, I love the alternate futures that we see when Mr. Frowny. Like, just basically, you see every situation that could potentially happen, and no matter which one happens, it leads to just It's just like it's a no-win scenario. It's gonna everyone's gonna hurt. Feelings are gonna get hurt no matter what you say, and it's just like you roll through them one by one, and it's not depressing. It's just kind of hilarious. Like, oh come on, man, it's great. But ultimately, I think another little. But I think that also works too. But I think what also makes it work too is that there is like that's not the only bit of comedy in there. When Steven wants to help Mr. Frowny and Garnet gives him a brief glimpse of gives Steven a brief little bit of her future vision so he can actually give him a proper fortune telling and explain the future. They describe it in the worst way possible. Like, Steven says, hey, can I borrow your future vision? I want to help this random stranger that I just met. And basically, Garnet's like, that seems like an appropriate use of my powers. Like, what? Like, I love that. It's just like, what the hell? And I love how casually Garnet is about this whole thing. She appears because she knew Steven would need her help. She gives Mr. Frowny a quarter, and then all she really does to help Steven out besides give him his future vision is just say, hey, by the way, come home by dinner. Like, she knows he's into something. And all she really needs to do is just give him a thing and walk away. I like that. And even the finale, and even the ending when Mr. Frowny does see Steven after Steven encourages Mr. Smiley to go talk to him. Like at first he's all happy to see Mr. Smiley. It's like, wait, how'd you know I was here? It's like, oh yeah, little robot boy told me. See Steven? Ah, he came to life! I don't know why. That's funny. I just like that. That's funny. And yeah, I'll give credit where it's due. Mr. Smiley and Mr. Frowny's comedy routine is actually fun. It is kind of fun. I do kind of see why in universe they would probably be successful, because it's a nice little offset to see their different personalities contrast off each other. Basically, one's super positive, the other's super negative. One sees the bright side of life, the other just kind of sees the bad. And basically, just seeing these two juxtaposed to one another and just kind of working off of each other, I could see that working. It's funny, but ultimately, the good emotional depth for the episode and for them, in my opinion, is just seeing them both kind of come together. Because, yeah, sometimes relationships don't work out, professional or personal. And likewise, it's a similar case with Smiley and Frowny. While clearly they do care about one another, and whether that thing is friendship or romantic, I don't know. They never really explain either or. It was clearly a close relationship, but again, whether they're in a relationship or were just friends doing a comedy bit, I don't know. But basically, it's clear that they did both like what they were doing and did treasure the time they had together. It's just, again, they both wanted different things from the act. Mr. Smiley wanted to have fun with the comedy act and just kind of do all this nice thing, just to have fun with his friend and so forth. But Mr. Frowny, he was depressed. He was sad, and he just wanted to take this whole thing, and he wanted Smiley to take this whole thing seriously. Like, he didn't think that the stuff that was on stage was necessary. He thought that he was basically like, why can't you just take this seriously? You don't really understand what I'm going through. Like, and again, it's clear that what would really sabotage their relationship wasn't just they wanted different things. It's just that they were in two different places. Basically, they both wanted one thing from the show, and they didn't understand why the other person didn't want that. And as a result, you can see why they ultimately wound up kind of drifting apart, because there's ultimately so much you can take for something like that. Case in point, like, it's like being friends with someone who is very overly negative. There's a part of you that wants to help them, who wants to bring them out of the dumps, but no matter what you try, nothing really seems to work. And ultimately, even if you do still care about them, eventually you can't really do anything to help them. You can try as hard as you can, but if they don't want to be helped, then they're not going to be responding to anything. That's kind of what we saw with Smiley and Frowny here. While they both did care about one another, they ultimately, because they both were just in two very different places, both professionally and emotionally, they were very much never going to. They were doomed to fall apart, like Frowny said. But what makes it better, in my opinion, what makes it good, in my opinion, is that at the end of the day, Smiley assures Frowny that he did care about all that stuff. He does it in a way that I think is really nice, because he does it in a way that showcases it's something that they shared. Like he doesn't say, "Look, I liked what we did. It was fun, and I'm glad we did it." He instead does it through his actions. He starts repeating the act to him and showcasing just how well he memorized the act. And they both just get into it very quickly. And again, it ultimately showcases that despite their falling out, it's still something that they both treasure. Yes, they may Yes, they both may have been in different places, but it's still something they cherish, something that they'll hold on to. And while they're never gonna get those days back, at the very least, it's still something that they share, and they're still friends at the end of the day. I like that. It's sweet, and it helps, and it's part of the reason why I liked when Mr. Frowny gave Smiley a hug, because at that point he finally realized, oh, I get it now. And realized, yeah, despite what the demons in Frowny said were telling him, Mr. Smiley, it was still, so he and Smiley are still friends. He and Smiley are still friends, and he didn't want to just abandon him. I like that. It's sweet, and I think it's a really good thing. And I think it's really nice. Nothing too big happens, but overall, it's a nice episode. Plenty of good laughs, some good character stuff with Mr. Smiley. Overall, just a good time. As for Last One Out of Beach City, this is also some good character stuff, but with less drama. It's kind of leans in more into comedy, but also deals a bit more with Pearl's development. The comedy comes from seeing Pearl awkwardly trying to be cool and sort of failing, because ultimately Pearl is still the stick-in-the-mud gem, which I don't like saying because I do like Pearl, but she is. And in terms of the team, she's the rules lawyer. She's the one that has to have everything a certain way. She's not one that doesn't try to push the envelope. That's why she and Steven's Night of Fun was putting together a puzzle. But ultimately, what I do like here is that it showcases Pearl, but what I like on how this episode showcases Pearl's development is that we see her trying to step out of her comfort zone a little. Yes, she's trying to impress Amethyst and Steven and show how cool she can really be, but she really is, but it's clear that she is trying to do something new. Actually live her life and enjoy herself, not tied down to anybody. After all, we have established with Pearl that she has dependency issues, so to see her finally kind of try to step out of her bubble and do something for herself, I like that. It's nice. And throughout the episode, we see her trying to keep going with that as she keeps taking risks, doing things she wouldn't normally do, like speeding on the highway, outracing the cops, pursuing this pink-haired lady just so she can say hello and talk to her, even going so far as to take a drink, which, yeah, she clearly isn't enjoying doing it, but hey, she wants to do something to make herself look cool, which I like. And I think that's what makes it work for the most part. That ultimately the biggest draw for the episode is seeing Pearl trying to step out of her comfort zone, and while there is some fun humor in seeing the struggle in that regard, and just kind of some of the awkward tension with her clearly trying to be cool but not fully understanding it, as well as the awkwardness when she meets the pink-haired mystery girl. But also just some nice but it's cool to see the development come through and see Pearl actually try and put her best foot forward and actually try and grow as a person and do something that's for her, no one else. I like that. It's fun. I like that. It's fun, and overall, it just leads to a nice episode full of some fun action, some nice little bit of character development and growth, and a satisfactory conclusion when she finally does run into the pink-haired girl again, and she actually managed to successfully get her number. So I like it overall. But good episode. So overall, yeah, Future Boy Zoltron, good time, good laughs, and plenty of heart and emotion. And Last One Out of Beach City, fun, nice scenes, great character stuff for Pearl, some nice dynamic action in the chase scenes and so forth, and a pretty fun, satisfactory conclusion. So overall, 2 good episodes that I enjoyed, and yeah, that's about it. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I will see you next week as I think we'll be looking at an onion-based episode and another episode that actually exceeds the 11-minute mark. So, yeah, I'm probably going to be doing what I did with Bismuth for that video. So, till then, I hope you have a good night. I'm sorry that I got a little bit more opaque as the video went on. There are clouds rolling in, so sorry for those who are watching and not listening. But I hope you have a good night, and I'll hopefully see you next week. Take care.